It's the 4th week of work renovating the roof, and after 3 weeks of good progress without too much bad weather, we knew that this week could be different, with some rain forecast to arrive at some stage, which meant that we wanted to get some new layers on top of the wooden beams as quickly as possible. But first we needed to do some work preparing for and then creating the ring beam. So we needed to work fast and hope that we might get lucky with the weather. But on the first day, there was nothing to worry about with the weather. And there was a beautiful sunny morning for an early start. And when the team arrived, they quickly got started on the last work on the wall for the ring beam. The technical architect was on site to review and discuss some specific elements. And after Enric's daily check, it was time for the mid-morning break and a discussion with Haggy about gutter options and football. At the start of the roof work, I gave an explanation as to the existing layers in the roof, and I thought now is a good time to explain the layers that are going to be in the new roof so that you can understand the work that we're going to be doing this week. And right now we've got all the beams in place, and the first thing we're going to be doing is to fill in the channel that the guys have created through the middle of the wall by filling it with concrete and creating the ring beam that will hold all of these beams fast. And then we're going to be doing two things this week: starting to add the new layers on top of the beams, and also starting some of the work on the outside of the wall on the cornices, especially those parts where we're going to be having gutters below. In the roof, before we did any work, there used to be the curved tiles on top and then a series of flat tiles that rested upon the wooden slats that were on top of the beams. And the big change for the new design of the roof is that we won't be using any wooden slats or these small tiles. Instead, we will be using a series of brick boards to cover all of the surface and plug the gaps between the beams. And getting these brick boards in place will be one of the top priorities for this week. And then after that, the next layer that will go on top will be a layer of insulation. There'll then be a very thin layer of impermeable material to really block the rain from coming in. And then on top of that will go all of the curved tiles in a very similar design to how they were before. I then headed out to pick up various things, including some additional plastic sheets. And when I was back, the ring beam prep work was complete and the team were moving on to some other tasks. Photo was finishing off the work, chipping out the rock on the salon wall. While the other two had cleared up the floor and were adjusting scaffolding for the ring beam pouring work. And then Photo moved on to one of the rubble piles to level it for some more outdoor scaffolding. Which Haggy and Seni started putting up for work on the cornice later on. And I returned to picking up some stones for use on the salon wall that we had been chipping out. None of the afternoon's work was moving us much closer to getting new layers on the beams, but we had given ourselves some contingency to make sure we were ready for the ring beam concrete work the next day.
Ya, ¿no? Como la logo pichón.
As they were leaving, the team asked for some extra water for the next day, so I filled up a bidon before also heading out. Day 2 was another early start for a big day of work, and thankfully the forecast was for sun. When the team were on site, they asked for a slightly different water supply so that they could hose down all the ring beam channels in the wall. But before they started that, one of the steel workers was briefly back on site to solder the metal of the ring beam to the bigger steel beam. And with the soldering done, the ring beam wetting could start. While we waited for the concrete to arrive, there was time for a bit more scaffolding and rubble work. And some more stone sorting and selection. Enric was back on site to check on progress. And then the concrete truck arrived. Followed shortly after by the delivery truck with its crane. Then everyone got set up for filling, lifting, and then emptying the concrete skip. With Hagi directing the pouring and Seni and Fodo following up and consolidating and leveling the concrete. For the final section of the ring beam, in the brick channel above the opening, the crane was at full stretch and the target drop zone was much narrower. So the team lifted and poured the last bit of concrete by hand. With the concrete all poured, there was some cleaning of the skip. And then the dropping off and lifting up of more materials, especially the brick boards we needed. And with the drop-off complete, the team could get started on laying the brick boards on top of the beams.
Una mica més, no? O què te faig?
Slotting them together with the tongues and grooves. The teams were laying the boards on alternate rows because they were going to need to trim half the boards to achieve the exact interbeam span. And while laying the boards on top, Fodo was doing some cleaning on the boards and beams from below.
Ja tällä vissiin jäätiin, on agafat uomo, ja jäädä kyllä.
The next day started sunny, but the forecast suggested clouds and possibly rain were incoming. And I was back in early, keen to move things forward. But unfortunately, the team were a bit delayed by some problems with the truck with the crane that they wanted to use. And I had a bit of a wait. But once they were on site, they got set up, albeit having to use the winch for lifting the mortar they needed. With the team back to 4 for the day, there wasn't much I could do to help on the roof at this stage, so I made use of the scaffolding that was in place to do some more work chipping off some of the last remnants of cement render on the outside walls. By mid-morning, the crane truck was back in action and the team were able to set up at the back of the house where they could mix the mortar and then lift it up in bulk to use in the joints between the brickboard rows. The weather forecast for the next day was now looking a bit grim, and I started to get out the plastic sheets that we wanted to put on top of the boards. But after some of the delays in the day, we hadn't progressed quite as much as I had hoped, especially in a few rows where we would need to move scaffolding tops out of the way. But at least by the end of the day, we had the whole area covered, and I left hoping that things would be okay. The next day started grey, dark, and windy, and there had been intermittent rain throughout the night. So my early morning checks were a bit different to the normal ones, and I headed upstairs a bit nervously. but apart from where rain had pooled in sags in the sheets, things didn't look too bad. And when the team arrived, we agreed to press on and try and get as many spaces as possible covered by boards. So we all worked on putting some of the sheets to the side and removing some of the pooled water. Although with the wind picking up, this was becoming a little bit trickier. And with the spaces opened up, the team got back to placing more boards. And I kept a watch out for changes in the weather, which when it did happen, happened very quickly. And we had a mad scramble to close up the house, making it all very dark, and then trying to get some covers back in place. Because of the scramble, I wasn't able to film much of the efforts, but after we had done our best with the covers, I had a bit more time for filming and also to try and get some of the water out. Some of my efforts were probably a bit futile, but I decided I would rather do something than just sit out the rain. Although I was happy for the team to take their mid-morning break, because they were soon back in action tidying things up. And I then checked the clouds and lightning for clues as to how much more rain might be heading our way. After some patching up work, there wasn't much chance to get back to the brickboards, so the team moved on to another indoor task that they needed to do at some stage, and that was the taking down of the wall beneath the new steel beams we had put in. Because this was sooner than I had expected, I'm sorry that I haven't yet explained the plans for this area, which I will do when everything is a bit lighter, calmer and clearer. But for now, perhaps you might like to suggest in the comments what you think the plans are for this area. While 3 of the team worked on the wall, it was getting a bit brighter outside, and Foda and I did some work patching up the sheets in the area without any boards in place. By the end of the day, it was as light as it had been all day, and both us and the house had a bit of a chance to dry out. And after the team had left, I also headed out, hoping we might dodge any further rain over the next 12 hours. It did rain again overnight, but thankfully not as heavily. And the state of the house when I checked it first thing was just about what I had expected.
Bom dia, Foda.
And with brighter skies approaching, the team got set up for more brickboard work. While I returned to more water removal work. With the team's work up and running, I decided to return to the wall rubble and do my best to clear as much as possible during the day.
Durante la semana, ¿no? Vamos a comer rumbo.
And that is the end of work for this week, which started steadily with the final wall work for the ring beam up there. And then some more scaffolding went up around the corner. And there was some work on the downstairs wall. And then the smoothing out of this rubble pile, which I've subsequently added more things to. And then on day 2, there was a lot of work creating the ring beam, and then getting started on the brick boards, which after a bit of a delay at the start, continued steadily the next day. While I did some work removing more concrete render from the wall up here, until we all switched our focus to covering up the roof with some plastic sheets, which looked to have done an okay job on the first night, but then they took a bit of a battering when the wind and rain arrived the next day. Especially after opening up a few spaces to try and get some more brick boards in place. And although the storm calmed and the rain lessened, the team sensibly moved on to clearing the wall up there beneath the new steel beam, and creating a great big pile of rubble, which today I've been trying to sort out and remove. While the team have been back on the roof putting in more brick boards. The last of which went in up in that corner just before they finished today. So this week we've got the first new layer in place above the wooden beams. So the view from the floor below has changed once again. But because of the rain, we haven't got onto the cornice work as planned. So that'll be for next week, after we've put up some more scaffolding and perhaps done some more cleaning up if some more rain arrives over the weekend. So please do tune in next week to see how we get on.